The chest pain started at 2 a.m., sharp and unrelenting, radiating down Dr. Sarah Williams' left arm, like lightning. She'd been a physician for over 20 years, and she knew exactly what this meant. Myocardial infarction, heart attack. As the nation's Surgeon General, she'd signed policies that saved thousands of cardiac patients, but now she was the one who needed saving. The irony wasn't lost on her as she drove herself to St. Mary's Medical Center, one hand on the wheel, the other pressed against her chest. She'd chosen St. Mary's because it was closest, not because she knew anything about their staff. If she had, she might have driven the extra 10 miles to University Hospital, because when Dr. Sarah Williams walked through those automatic glass doors, clutching her chest and struggling to breathe, Richard Mitchell took one look at her dark skin and made an assumption that would destroy his career. He saw a middle-aged black woman in casual clothes, jeans and a Georgetown University sweatshirt, and his prejudices kicked in faster than his medical training. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called out dismissively, not even bothering to approach her. "We don't treat people like you here without insurance verification and a referral. The free clinic downtown opens at 8. What Dr. Mitchell didn't know was that he was talking to the woman who supervised every major hospital in the country, the physician who advised the president on national health policy, the surgeon who had performed life-saving operations in war zones, and in exactly 18 minutes, when her security detail arrived looking for their missing protectee, Dr. Richard Mitchell would learn the most expensive lesson of his medical career. The fluorescent lights in St. Mary's emergency room cast harsh shadows across the polished floors as Dr. Sarah Williams stood in the doorway, one hand still pressed against her chest where the pain felt like someone was driving a knife between her ribs. The emergency room was nearly empty at this ungodly hour, just a few overnight staff and a homeless man sleeping in the corner chair. Richard Mitchell sat behind the nurse's station, his feet propped up on a desk, scrolling through his phone with the casual indifference of someone who'd been working the night shift for too long. At 45, he'd been practicing emergency medicine for 15 years, and he'd developed what he considered street smarts about the kind of people who showed up in ERs after midnight. When he looked up and saw Sarah approaching, everything about his body language changed. His feet came down from the desk, his expression hardened, and he leaned back in his chair like he was preparing for a confrontation. "Can I help you?" he asked, though his tone suggested he had no intention of helping anyone. Sarah pressed her hand more firmly against her chest, fighting to keep her voice steady despite the crushing pain. "I'm experiencing severe chest pain, radiating down my left arm. Onset was approximately 40 minutes ago, accompanied by diaphoresis and mild dismay." The medical terminology should have been a red flag. Most patients didn't describe their symptoms using terms like diaphoresis and dismay. But Dr. Mitchell heard only what his prejudices allowed him to hear. "Uh-huh," he said skeptically, making no move to get up from his chair. "And do you have insurance?" Sarah blinked, confused by the question. In all her years of medicine, she'd never been asked about insurance before receiving emergency treatment. "I'm sorry. What does that have to do with anything? I'm having cardiac symptoms that require immediate evaluation." Mitchell's laugh was harsh and dismissive. "Look, lady, I've heard every sob story in the book. Chest pain is the oldest trick for getting pain meds. You walk in here with your sob story, hoping we'll just hand over some OxyContin without asking questions." The accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. She was a respected physician, a military officer, a public servant who dedicated her life to improving health care for all Americans. And this man was treating her like a drug addict. "Sir, I'm not seeking narcotics," she said, her voice remaining professional despite the pain and humiliation. "I'm describing symptoms consistent with myocardial infarction. I need an EKG, cardiac enzymes, and immediate evaluation." Dr. Mitchell rolled his eyes. "Right, and I suppose you're a doctor too. Let me guess. You went to Google University and now you think you know medical terminology." Sarah could have ended this conversation with a single sentence. She could have identified herself as the Surgeon General, could have demanded the respect her position commanded, but something stopped her. Maybe it was curiosity about how far this man's prejudices would take him. Maybe it was a desire to document this behavior for future action. Or maybe she was just too shocked by the blatant racism to respond effectively. "I'm asking you to perform your duty as a physician," she said quietly. "Someone is having a medical emergency, and you're refusing to provide care based on assumptions about their race and economic status." Mitchell's face flushed red. "Don't you dare play the race card with me. This has nothing to do with race and everything to do with people like you coming in here, taking up space and resources that should go to real emergencies." "People like me?" Sarah asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "You know exactly what I mean," Dr. Mitchell said, standing up from his chair now, his voice rising. "People without insurance, people looking for handouts, people who think the emergency room is their personal free clinic. Well, not on my watch." He gestured toward the exit doors. "There's a community health center downtown that opens at 8 a.m. That's where you need to go. This emergency room is for people with real emergencies and real insurance." Sarah felt something crack inside her chest, and for a moment she wasn't sure if it was her heart or her faith in the medical profession she'd served her entire life. She'd faced discrimination before, certainly, but never in a medical setting, never when she was vulnerable and seeking help. "So you're refusing to treat me?" she asked, wanting to be absolutely clear about what was happening. "I'm telling you to go where you belong," Dr. Mitchell said coldly. What happened next would be talked about in medical circles for years to come. Sarah Williams, despite the crushing pain in her chest, pulled out her government-issued phone and made a call that would change everything. "This is Surgeon General Williams," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving Dr. Mitchell's face. "I need my security detail at Mary's Medical Center immediately, and I need the hospital administrator contacted. We have a code blue situation here, but not the kind you'd expect." Dr. Mitchell's face went through several color changes as the words sank in. Surgeon General, security detail, government phone, hospital administrator. "Wait," he stammered, his arrogance evaporating like morning mist. "Did you just say Surgeon General?" Sarah ended her call and looked at him with the kind of calm authority that comes from years of command. "Mitchell. Yes, I know your name from your badge. You've just refused emergency medical care to a cardiac patient based solely on racial assumptions. You violated your Hippocratic Oath, federal anti-discrimination laws, and basic human decency." The blood drained from Dr. Mitchell's face. "I didn't know. You didn't say. I shouldn't have to identify myself to receive basic medical care," Sarah said, though the pain was becoming almost unbearable now. "And the fact that you're only willing to treat me now that you know my title says everything about who you really are." Mitchell was stumbling over his words now, reaching for equipment with shaking hands. "Please, let me examine you. Let me get an EKG. I can explain everything." "You'll explain everything to the medical board," Sarah said. "Right now I need you to call another physician to treat me, because I no longer trust you with my medical care." But Dr. Mitchell wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at the entrance doors, where three men in dark suits were walking purposefully toward them. Secret Service agents, their eyes scanning the room with professional alertness. "Dr. Williams?" the lead agent called out. "We got your signal. Are you all right?" "Agent Thompson," Sarah acknowledged, still holding her chest. "I'm experiencing cardiac symptoms, but Dr. Mitchell here has been reluctant to provide treatment." Agent Thompson's gaze shifted to Dr. Mitchell, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Is there a problem, doctor?" "No problem," Dr. Mitchell said quickly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just a misunderstanding. I'm happy to treat the Surgeon General immediately." "It's too late for that," Sarah said firmly. "I need another physician. Someone who treats patients based on their medical needs, not their appearance." Agent Thompson spoke into his radio. "We need the hospital administrator and the chief of staff here immediately. And get Dr. Martinez from University Hospital on the line. Tell him the Surgeon General needs emergency cardiac evaluation." Within minutes the emergency room was transformed. Elizabeth Chen, the hospital administrator, arrived looking like she'd thrown on clothes and raced from her bed. Dr. William Rodriguez, the chief of staff, was right behind her. Both looked mortified as Agent Thompson briefed them on the situation. "Dr. Mitchell," Chen said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Please step away from the patient immediately." Dr. Rodriguez moved quickly to Sarah's side. "Surgeon General Williams, I'm Dr. Rodriguez, Chief of Staff. I'm going to personally oversee your care, and I want to apologize profusely for what's happened here." As Dr. Rodriguez began a proper medical examination, taking vital signs and ordering the tests that Dr. Mitchell should have ordered an hour ago, Sarah watched her original physician standing in the corner, his career effectively over. "Dr. Mitchell," Dr. Chen said quietly, "you're suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Please surrender your hospital badge and leave the premises." Mitchell's hands shook as he unclipped his badge. "Dr. Chen, please. Let me explain. I didn't know who she was. It was just a misunderstanding." "The fact that you didn't know who she was is exactly the problem," Dr. Chen replied coldly. "You refused treatment to a patient having a cardiac event because you made assumptions based on race. That's not a misunderstanding. That's malpractice and discrimination." Agent Thompson approached Dr. Mitchell with a grim expression. "Doctor, you're going to need to come with us. The Justice Department will want to interview you about tonight's events." "The Justice Department?" Dr. Mitchell's voice cracked. "For what?" "Violation of federal civil rights laws," Agent Thompson said. "Denying medical care based on racial discrimination is a federal crime when it involves government officials. But honestly, it should be a crime regardless of who the victim is." As they led Dr. Mitchell away, Sarah felt a different kind of pain in her chest. Not physical, but emotional. How many other patients had he treated this way? How many people had been denied care because of their skin color, their apparent economic status, or their perceived worth? Dr. Rodriguez returned with test results that confirmed Sarah's fears. She was indeed having a mild heart attack. "We need to get you to the cardiac catheterization lab immediately," he said. "Dr. Martinez from University Hospital is on his way, but we can't wait." As they wheeled her toward the elevator, Sarah's phone buzzed with messages. Word was already spreading through government channels about what had happened. The Secretary of Health and Human Services wanted a full report. The White House physician was offering to fly in specialists. The media was starting to ask questions. But Sarah's mind was on bigger issues. This wasn't just about one racist doctor, it was about systemic problems in healthcare that she'd been fighting her entire career. How many black patients received substandard care because doctors like Mitchell made assumptions about their worth? How many people died because their symptoms weren't taken seriously? The cardiac procedure was successful, and Sarah's heart attack was relatively minor, thanks to her quick action in seeking treatment despite the obstacles she'd faced. But the real damage wasn't to her heart, it was to her faith in a system she'd spent her life trying to improve. 3 days later, from her hospital bed, Sarah held a press conference that would shake the medical establishment to its core. "What happened to me at Mary's Medical Center wasn't an isolated incident," she said, looking directly into the cameras. "It was a window into the systematic racism that plagues our healthcare system. I was denied emergency care for a heart attack because a doctor looked at my skin color and decided I wasn't worth treating." The story exploded across national media. Healthcare discrimination began trending on social media. Medical professionals around the country shared their own stories of witnessing or experiencing racism in healthcare settings. Dr. Mitchell's medical license was revoked after a swift investigation by the state medical board. The Justice Department filed federal civil rights charges against him. St. Mary's Medical Center faced a federal investigation and implemented mandatory bias training for all staff. But the real change came in the policies Sarah implemented as Surgeon General. She mandated unconscious bias training for all healthcare workers receiving federal funding. She created a national database to track racial disparities in emergency care. She established a hotline for patients to report discriminatory treatment. 6 months later, Sarah returned to St. Mary's Medical Center, not as a patient, but as part of a surprise inspection to see how their new anti-discrimination policies were working. She walked through the same emergency room doors where she'd been refused care, this time wearing her military uniform with the stars of a vice admiral clearly visible. The staff recognized her immediately, treating her with the respect and deference due to her rank. But Sarah wasn't interested in being treated differently because of her uniform. She was interested in seeing how they treated other patients. She watched for 2 hours as the new staff, Dr. Mitchell, had been replaced by Dr. Maria Santos, a young physician who treated every patient with equal dignity regardless of their appearance or ability to pay. She saw Dr. Santos spend just as much time with an uninsured homeless man as she did with a well-dressed businessman. She watched nurses treat elderly black women with the same respect they showed young white professionals. "Dr. Santos," Sarah said, approaching the new emergency physician. "I'm Surgeon General Williams. I wanted to see how the changes were working." Dr. Santos smiled warmly. "Surgeon General, it's an honor. The changes have been transformative. We've implemented protocols that ensure every patient receives immediate assessment regardless of their appearance or perceived ability to pay. We've seen a significant improvement in patient satisfaction and, more importantly, in health outcomes for minority patients." Sarah nodded, feeling something she hadn't felt in months: hope. "And Dr. Mitchell, gone," Dr. Santos said firmly. "Good riddance. What he did to you, and probably to countless other patients, was inexcusable, but his actions led to changes that will help thousands of people receive better care." As Sarah prepared to leave, a young black woman approached the emergency desk, holding her chest and describing cardiac symptoms. Sarah watched carefully as Dr. Santos immediately sprang into action, calling for an EKG and beginning a thorough assessment without asking a single question about insurance or ability to pay. That's how it should always work, Sarah thought to herself. Later that evening, Sarah received a call from Dr. Mitchell. He was working as a medical assistant at a small clinic in another state, having been unable to find work as a physician anywhere in the country. "Surgeon General Williams," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I have no right to call you, but I wanted to apologize. What I did was inexcusable, and I've had 6 months to think about it every day." Sarah listened quietly as he continued. "I lost everything: my license, my job, my reputation. My wife left me. My children won't speak to me. But you know what the worst part is? Realizing how many other patients I probably treated the same way over the years. Realizing that my prejudices may have cost someone their life." "Dr. Mitchell," Sarah said finally, "I appreciate your call, but your apology isn't the point. The point is ensuring that no other patient experiences what I experienced that night." "I know," he said. "I just wanted you to know that your actions, the changes you implemented, they matter. The clinic where I work now serves mostly minority patients, and the difference in how we're required to treat everyone equally, it's opened my eyes to things I was blind to for years." After hanging up, Sarah reflected on the strange journey that had brought her from that emergency room to this moment. She'd gone from victim to catalyst, from patient to policymaker, from someone denied care to someone ensuring that care would be available to all. The physical pain from her heart attack had healed months ago, but the emotional impact of that night would drive her work for years to come. Every policy she wrote, every regulation she implemented, every speech she gave carried with it the memory of standing in that emergency room, clutching her chest, begging for help that was denied because of the color of her skin. But it also carried the hope of change, the possibility that future patients would never face what she had faced, and the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is turn your pain into purpose. Sarah Williams had always known that medicine was about more than treating illness. It was about treating human beings with dignity and respect. Her experience at St. Mary's had taught her that this principle needed to be protected and enforced, not just hoped for. And as she continued her work as Surgeon General, she carried with her the determination to ensure that every American, regardless of race, economic status, or appearance, would receive the medical care they needed when they needed it most. Because in the end, that night in the emergency room hadn't just been about one racist doctor and one discriminated patient. It had been about the soul of American healthcare, and Sarah Williams was determined to help heal it. If you believe that healthcare is a human right that shouldn't depend on the color of your skin, hit that like button and subscribe. Because stories like this remind us that even the most painful experiences can become catalysts for positive change. and that sometimes the greatest service we can provide is ensuring that no one else has to endure what we've endured. The fight for equality in healthcare continues, and it requires all of us to stand up and speak out when we witness injustice.